Apparently, YouTube let me out on the main highway a little bit last night. Lately, the shows always come out at midnight Eastern Time, and then after that, they sit there and I get a few views, and then I wake up in the morning and I see what's going on. This morning, my show about Rachel Maddow had quite a few more views than usual, and all of the comments were from people I didn't know. We usually have the regular crew commenting, and this morning I didn't see anybody from the regular crew. Everybody was somebody I didn't know. Shout out, by the way, to the regular crew. I really appreciate you. And especially this morning because I seem to have triggered quite a few comfy neolibs and I could use your help talking them down. Helgard Adams says, "Why do you assume that anyone would be interested in your lame duck opinion? Utterly boring, painful talk. Let it be." But what about what I said? What do you think about what I actually said, Helgard? Damarado Happy Skyper is even more clear. You, the one who was talking, shut the fuck up. What is it about what I'm saying, Damarado, that's bothering you? Come on. Richard K. Flowers says, Republicans would explode if they tried to tell the truth. Republicans are genetically geared to lying, cheating, stealing, murdering, everything evil. Does this sound like a Rachel Maddow audience member to you? Republicans have no honor, no conscience, no empathy, no honesty, no love for anyone or anything other than themselves. They are corrupt to the core. That's why Americans are dying by the thousands. All Republicans, Richard. All Republicans? All Republicans are genetically geared to lying, cheating, stealing, murdering. I'm not a Republican, but I grew up with a lot of Republicans. They may have their heads up their asses, but this is a little bit harsh, I'd say, Richard. And the only way you could really think this and say this with a straight face is if you are swilling the corporate Kool-Aid. This is the monster that left media have created. I replied, and Democrats, like the good controlled opposition they are, provide them cover. Go back and watch yesterday's show if you want to understand controlled opposition better. Thanks to Keaton Weiss. This one's from Betsy Bird. She knows she's doing a good job when people on the opposite side start making a show about her. I'm not on the opposite side. The opposite side supposedly is populated with right-wingers. I'm the opposite of the opposite side. Who are you, dude? I question your show. Just another aloha male who doesn't have a brain, just like Trump. I mean, this might have been a little harsh, but all I could think of was another brain-dead, comfy neolib. Pretty much all of the criticisms you can make of the Fox News audience are directly applicable here. This is just not thinking. Betsy also says, we love her, and she's one of the greatest newscasters who is well respected. However, I guess you like Fox News. LOL! Exclamation point times 5. Okay, Betsy, I guess it's time for you to go back to brunch. The next thing to address is from a Facebook discussion I had yesterday. Sanford Schwartz said, Alan Kit Howell, could you kindly post a link to a report about Biden being charged with or accused of rape? I was like, where have you been, Sanford? This was in response to me accusing both Biden and Trump of being racist rapists. Sanford then said, are you insinuating Biden held parties with Jeffrey Epstein too? Just curious. So I linked him to a recent show. Australian journalists keep the heat on U.S. plutocrat-owned politicians. And that episode reprised the Tara Reade scandal, so he could go to that one, or he could go to other episodes I've posted over the last few months about Tara Reade and Joe Biden. Thanks to Donna L. Thomas, who said, seriously, you slept through Tara Reade? And then Marta Viren Berla said, Sanford Schwartz, Senator Biden didn't rape me, but on a flight when I was a 25-year-old stewardess, he held me hostage with his hand up underneath my uniform skirt, rubbing my left cheek, while asking about joining the Mile High Club. I am one of 11 women who came forward with our various assault stories, and the media has silenced us. Some of us were threatened, so process that. And while we're talking about Joe Biden, let's talk about the person who was reportedly on an email chain allegedly involving Democrat presidential nominee Joe Biden's son, Hunter Biden. Apparently, a laptop computer magically showed up in a computer repair shop and then was turned over to the FBI because it had some pretty interesting stuff on it, including a payout for former Vice President Joe Biden as part of a deal with a Chinese energy firm. The comfy neolibs don't want to admit that this is real, but from what I can tell, it's very real. From this laptop, one email dated May 13, 2017, and obtained by Fox News includes a discussion of remuneration packages for 6 people in a business deal with a Chinese energy firm. The email appeared to identify Biden as chair/vice chair, depending on an agreement with CEFC, in an apparent reference to now bankrupt CEFC China Energy Company, Fox News reported. The email includes a note that Hunter has some office expectations he will elaborate. A proposed equity split references 20 for H and 10 held by H for the big guy, with no further details. Fox News spoke to one of the people who was copied on the email who confirmed its authenticity. Multiple sources reportedly told Fox News that the big guy was a reference to the former vice president. The New York Post broke the story yesterday, revealing that Hunter Biden had pursued lucrative deals in communist China that he said would be interesting for me and my family. The email is contained in a trove of data that the owner of a computer repair shop in Delaware said was recovered from a MacBook Pro laptop that was dropped off in April 2019 and never retrieved, the Post reported. The computer was seized by the FBI, and a copy of its contents made by the shop owner shared with the Post this week by former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. The New York Post released additional emails at the start of the week that appeared to indicate that then Vice President Joe Biden met with an executive at Burisma, a Ukrainian gas company where Hunter Biden served on the board. So what now, you comfy neolibs? This is the potential president of the United States. You've got evil, and you've got evil. And you look in the mirror, and you've chosen one of those, and then you have to say, you've got even more evil, staring at you right from the mirror. Yep, this is what I call a moral conundrum. And now on to the main course from the World Socialist website, wsws.org. Democrats let Amy Coney Barrett sail through Supreme Court confirmation hearings. In a Supreme Court confirmation process fraught with the most immediate and ominous implications for the democratic rights of the working class, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, the far-right nominee of President Donald Trump, sailed through 3 days of hearings before the Senate Judiciary Committee this week. Her confirmation is assured thanks to the cowardice and duplicity of her Democratic Party opponents. This story is important because a lot of the comfy neolibs say that SCOTUS appointments are why you should vote for Joe Biden. But I keep telling them on my Facebook feed that the reason we have such a conservative Supreme Court is because the duplicity of Democrats has allowed it. Both the Democrats and the Republicans, working together, have given us the conservative Supreme Court we now have. And I can say from firsthand experience, they've also given us a lot of shitty federal judges. If you, hypothetically, are an employee suing an employer in federal court, you're going to get your ass handed to you on a plate because federal court judges always side with the employer. And you can blame Democrats for that at least as much as you can blame Republicans. Back to the story. With the formality of the hearings out of the way, following a round of testimony Thursday from pro and con panels of legal experts, the Republican majority on the Judiciary Committee scheduled a vote on the nomination for October 22nd. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell announced that consideration of the nomination by the full Senate would begin the next day, October 23rd. A floor vote to confirm Barrett and further shift the balance on the court by consolidating a 6-3 right-wing majority is expected on October 26th or October 27th, 1 week before Election Day. Barrett, 48, was for many years a professor of law at the University of Notre Dame, where she established her credentials as an opponent of abortion rights, gay marriage, gun control, separation of church and state, social reform legislation, and corporate regulation. Trump appointed her to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 7th Circuit in 2017, where she established a record as a hardened reactionary. University of Virginia law professors who analyzed more than 1,700 cases before the Seventh Circuit said Barrett is perhaps the most conservative judge on the court. I bumped into a judge like that in federal court a few years ago. Actually, more than one judge when we went to appellate court. The ironic part is that these judges weren't all appointed by Donald Trump. There are a lot of asshole federal court judges who were appointed by Democrats. And don't even get me started about Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania. The Pennsylvania Attorney General is supposedly a progressive, but even though he's a Democrat, he's as much of an asshole as any of the Republican judges. Anyway, back to the story. A former law clerk and avowed disciple of the arch-reactionary deceased leader of the right-wing bloc on the Supreme Court, Antonin Scalia, Barrett worked as a young lawyer in the firm headed by Republican power broker James Baker. There she helped prepare the legal arguments used by the George W. Bush campaign in 2000 in the infamous Bush versus Gore case, in which the Supreme Court halted vote counting in Florida and handed the presidency to the Republican loser. In his 2000 ruling, Scalia argued that the American people had no constitutional right to elect the president. Rather, state legislatures were authorized to select the presidential electors regardless of the popular vote in any given state. That's the advantage, my dear Republican friends, of living in a republic versus living in a democracy. The people don't get to decide who wins the presidency. Barrett is now poised to join two other justices who also worked on the Bush side of the legal case, Chief Justice John Roberts and Associate Justice Brett Kavanaugh. The Democrats capitulated to the rush to confirm Barrett within days of Trump's naming her last month, following the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They could have, had they wished, galvanized broad popular opposition and exposed the profoundly anti-democratic content of the nomination, particularly after Trump's performance in his September 29 debate with Joe Biden, when he refused to commit to a peaceful transition of power and told the fascist Proud Boys militia to stand by. In the course of the hearings, the first 2 days of which were nationally televised, the Democrats deliberately downplayed the connection between the rush to confirm and install Barrett on the Supreme Court and Trump's conspiracy to carry out an election coup. Trump has signaled that the plot involves his rejection of the results of the November 3rd vote and a claim of victory on the basis of false charges of mail-in ballot fraud. This is to be accompanied by the unleashing of armed fascist militias against anti-Trump protesters and Democratic governors in key battleground states such as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Personally, I think that sounds a little unhinged, but I'm going to keep reading. A key aim of the conspiracy is to create conditions where Republican-controlled legislatures in those states can override the popular vote and select pro-Trump slates of electors. Okay, this is me again. As you think about it, what happened in Florida actually happened the way he says. The voters don't get to decide. That's constitutional. Okay, maybe this isn't completely unhinged. Back to the story. As Trump has made clear in recent weeks, he is counting on a solid far-right majority on the Supreme Court to facilitate such an illegal seizure of power. The Democrats treated Barrett's potential role on the Supreme Court in ratifying a constitutional coup as a side issue, instead focusing on the impact of her addition to the court on a White House-backed effort to overturn the Affordable Care Act in a case that comes before the Supreme Court 1 week after Election Day. They made no mention of the exposure only days before the opening of the confirmation hearings of a plot by pro-Trump militia gunmen to kidnap and murder the Democratic governor of Michigan and seize control of the state legislature. Even the issue of Barrett's publicly stated hostility to the landmark Roe v. Wade ruling, which established a federal right to abortion, was relegated to a secondary rank alongside her other reactionary positions. On the issue of the election, the Democrats merely made lame appeals to Barrett to commit to recusing herself from any post-election cases that might arise regarding the voting result, which she unceremoniously rejected. Democrats on the Judiciary Committee, including Biden's running mate Kamala Harris, avoided making any reference to Barrett's religious zealotry. She is a member of People of Praise, a largely Catholic group that formerly referred to wives as handmaids. Senator Dianne Feinstein, the ranking Democrat on the committee, was sidelined as the Democrat spokesperson because during the 2017 confirmation hearings, she told Barrett, "The dogma lives loudly within you," a supposed overreach that has since been condemned by Democrats and Republicans alike. Feinstein began her questioning of Barrett on Tuesday by inviting her to introduce 6 of her children who were seated behind her. She told the judge, "We all have our moral values. We have our religions. We live by that. I respect you and your family for doing just that." At the conclusion of the hearing on Thursday, Feinstein hugged the Republican committee chairman and Trump flunky Lindsey Graham and thanked him for his fairness. Okay, peeps, you still like Dianne Feinstein? The media portrayed Barrett as a loving wife and mother, echoing Joe Biden, who called her a very fine woman in his debate with Trump. The Times ran a flattering article on Barrett on Thursday, attempting to give her elevation to the High Court a positive feminist gloss. The article quoted her as saying on the day she was nominated, "While I am a judge, I'm better known back home as a room parent, a carpool driver, and birthday party planner." But despite such efforts by the media and the Democrats, her real role as an instrument of the corporate financial elite for political and social reaction could not be completely concealed. The elaborate charade of constitutional protocol turned to farce as Barrett contemptuously batted away questions from Democrats on the committee on her far-right positions. Questions from Democratic senators that Barrett refused to answer include whether the president has a constitutional right to unilaterally delay an election, whether mail-in voting was an essential way to vote for millions of Americans right now amid the pandemic, whether it is illegal to intimidate voters at the polls, whether the president has the right to deny a person the right to vote based on his or her race, whether the president has a right to pardon himself, whether the president can refuse to comply with a court order, whether it was wrong to separate immigrant children from their parents at the border, whether the Supreme Court's 1965 ruling in Griswold v. Connecticut that states can ban married couples from using contraceptives was correctly decided, whether she agrees with Supreme Court precedent banning laws that criminalize homosexual conduct, and the 2015 Obergefell versus Hodges decision upholding the right of same-sex couples to marry, and whether the First Amendment protects a reporter's decision to protect a confidential source. On Thursday, the New York Times quoted Paul M. Collins, Jr., a political scientist at the University of Massachusetts, as saying, "Though past nominees have also avoided answering some of the senators' questions, Barrett took this to a whole new level. Having studied how forthcoming nominees have been since public confirmation hearings at which nominees testified beginning in 1939, I think Barrett will rank as among the least responsive nominees in American history." The Democrats' utter prostration in the hearings is inseparable from the right-wing character of the Biden election campaign. They are determined to do or say nothing that might alert the working class to the real and present danger of dictatorship and the dimensions of the assault on democratic rights for fear of sparking a mass movement from below against Trump. That's interesting. This is interesting because it means that riling the people up for any reason, whether it's a Republican reason or a Democratic reason, will shake up the plutocratic order. Yeah, this is very intriguing. Back to the story. This they fear more than a presidential coup because any such movement would threaten the capitalist system, which they defend no less than the Republicans. That was a good article. We're going to have to think about this, people.